You know, Spidey, it's been a pretty good marathon. A lot of games to cover. Some are good, some, were a little hard to get through, but no matter what, there was always something to enjoy. I really don't think there could ever be a game about you that I hate. Okay, so we're going to be doing this one a little differently. So I've got Jake here.
From Boss Rush?
Yeah, from Boss Rush, if you've never seen Boss Rush, which will be getting back up again at some point in the near future. It's going to have to wait till after the marathon, but thankfully, it's almost over. I've enjoyed it quite a bit, but we're about at the end of the road here. We just have Marvel's Spider-Man to get to. But first, we got to be talking about this one. The Amazing Spider-Man 2. So, you've played a little bit of this.
I've played like a minute of the web swinging, and that is, I watched you play it a little bit, but that is the only thing I remember, so basically I'm going into this completely out of the
yeah.
I don't know anything about the game as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
So that'll be an interesting
but
thing to learn.
I've got my boy, I've got my notes. So let's talk about The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
The second one.
Now, if you're wondering why we're doing this like this, partially is because I'm out of time. There's no time left. I still have to go to work. I still have to go to school. The game comes out tonight.
Yeah.
It comes out tomorrow, but we're picking it up tonight. Let's get started. I actually want to leave the plot for last, because that's a big mess that I want to spend the most time with. First of all, I think the thing that stood out the most about The Amazing Spider-Man 2, the thing that people seem to bring up at first when talking about the game, is the way web swinging was handled. So it's a little different this time around. I'm not the biggest fan, personally. Now, you use both trigger buttons on the controller, one for each hand. Your left hand and your right hand.
Oh, right.
It's not even so much that it's cumbersome or that it doesn't work right. The thing is, I don't understand what it adds. It adds nothing to the experience. It certainly doesn't benefit anything. But the web swinging, is just not my thing. Now, the web swinging is a little better in the aspect that, unlike in the last game, the camera's pulled out from Spider-Man a bit. You get a little better sense of the city. It's just that things don't look quite as good this time around. I thought that there was more quality to the texture, or at least there was
at least the lighting and like reflectiveness and stuff like that. I think that if there was like lower texture quality in the last one, you couldn't tell because there was like lens flares.
Well, there's more,
like,
and there's just more detail in the texturing this time around. Everything feels a bit more flat now, which I don't quite understand why they didn't just carry over those assets. They carry over a lot of stuff from the first Amazing Spider-Man game. I don't know why that hit the chopping block.
Yeah.
Combat is another thing I want to bring up in that respect, because more or less it's the same, but it feels less good. I don't know what it is. It feels like there's a difference in timing between the animations. The combat doesn't feel like it flows quite right. It doesn't feel like it connects the same way. And the sad thing about it is, I think the developers knew that, because one of the things I mentioned in the last review was what was so great about the combat was that you could just glide through entire groups of enemies. You could just take them all out, but you do not see a single group of enemies as large as the ones you would see in the first game in the second. They just don't get as big. I think the developers knew that it just was a lot more cumbersome this time around. It just
bogged down the game, I guess.
Yeah. And you're just incapable of taking them out quite the same way. I think the only thing about The Amazing Spider-Man 2 I really, really like, and an idea that I thought worked really well, was how you get alternate costumes. And kind of like how you would go find the secret Oscorp labs in the first game, there's something kind of like that in this one, but it's like stolen Oscorp tech. And you go through these areas, you take out the criminals that are there one by one. You try not to get caught. If you get caught, the thing gets locked away and you can't get it and you have to start over. But if you make it through, you get the tech that's at the end of it, and then you can apply it to your costume and you make a new suit out of it. And it's Yeah, which is a neat idea. Of course, once I got the 2099 suit, that's all I wore because I love 2099. So one of the selling points of the game now is conversing with other characters. This is a completely useless feature.
Yeah. I remember watching you do this the first time, and I was like, oh, interesting. You know, you can choose different, press different buttons to get different dialogue options. And be like, oh, ask different questions to one of the characters so that you can get different information. And he said different information each time. And then you end the conversation, and all you had to do was end the conversation from the beginning because he just talked about all the information he talked about through the conversation already.
Yeah.
So
it's completely useless. After that, I just started finishing the conversations as soon as they started. I got all the information that I needed. It's a useless feature. The design of the game does not accommodate that kind of mechanic. You know, after a while, I get tired of hearing Spider-Man's voice, not just in those conversations, but also just in general. He's a fine voice actor. It's more of the writing, to be perfectly honest.
One of the things that we've seen, all throughout Spider-Man games is, his witty banter during fights.
Yeah.
And it kind of fleshes out fights. But the thing is, there's no in-between between it being oh, this is like Spider-Man doing his Spider-Manning with his voice. And ow, this hurts my ears, and it sucks.
Yeah. He sounds annoying to listen to.
Yeah.
And I would comment on the other voice actors, but none of them were memorable enough to really stand out.
Yeah.
I guess the guy that played Kraven was fine. I thought Kraven sounded okay. It wasn't as good as Jim Cummings, because Jim Cummings played him in Shattered Dimensions, and it was perfect casting. And this guy was fine. He really was. It's just, felt like a missed opportunity. What was another really weird thing about the interrogations or the conversations was the characters moving.
Oh my god.
Because they don't stop.
Oh.
They're constantly,
Okay. Other characters I didn't mind that much, but Spider-Man's movement made me
entire
so
time
mad. Because it was obviously motion captured.
It's all motion capture.
And somebody was like, hey, Spider-Man, you're an energetic youngster, and you have to never stop moving your body ever when you're talking. He did like random portions in the talking where he would jump up on the wall around the person and it wouldn't even do anything. He'd just jump right off and start swinging his arms and it's so awkward. His feet were constantly moving all over the floor. It's
So under visuals, I have Spider-Man and everything else. That's what I wrote down. So Spider-Man looks better this time around. I like the way Spider-Man looks. His costume is better, although what I said in the last review kind of holds true here. That's from a design standpoint, and that's more because of the film than the game that's adapting it.
Graphically, I noticed that in the last game there were bump maps and effects all over the suit. You could see stuff raised bits and all of that. That was really cool. In this game, it just looked kind of flat. Past that, some of the stuff just the acting seems badly done, not really checked through, and some of it just doesn't seem quite as cared for as other Spider-Man games have done in the past.
Speaking of which, the story. Okay, so the story of this game is my least favorite thing about it. I hate the story of The Amazing Spider-Man 2. What happens in the movie has so little to do with this game. Everything that happens in the film just kind of pops up at the end of the game in a handful of missions and then is completely forgot about immediately after. For this game's storyline, we have the first Amazing Spider-Man movie, the first Amazing Spider-Man game, and then the Amazing Spider-Man 2 game. The movie doesn't matter. This game begins with Uncle Ben's death, which a little late to be getting into that, which was annoying. I mean, it is still more or less how it happened in the movie.
Okay.
It's very close to what happened in the movie.
Yeah.
There are some inconsistencies. For instance, Peter never interacted with Uncle Ben's killer before Uncle Ben died, which takes away the entire element of Peter being partially responsible for Uncle Ben's death by not stopping the crook when he could have. Uncle Ben died, thus leading into the lesson of great power and great responsibility. It defeats the entire point of the biggest thing about Spider-Man. Spider-Man doesn't have a point anymore. It's his entire origin story has no purpose, which is solidified by after Uncle Ben's death. We shoot forward into 2 years later. 2 years have passed, and suddenly he's on a revenge quest again for Uncle Ben's killer, which is stupid, and I hate that.
Yeah.
It throws away all of the developing that he did throughout the first game and the first movie, and it just throws it out the window because I don't know if they had any idea what they were doing with this story. So then you're on this revenge quest, you find Herman Schultz, the Shocker, you interrogate him, and then he points you in the right direction. You find out that this guy that killed Uncle Ben is this like high-class mercenary. You give this guy money, and he's super undercover, he gets disposable phones and everything.
That's one of the things that I really noticed was Uncle Ben's killer, who, yeah, it's just this guy who robs a Fast Mart. It makes 0 sense for him to be some high-profile criminal at all. Like,
it makes no
make
sense whatsoever. It's stupid, and it gets even dumber. So you track down Uncle Ben's killer. I forget what his name was, but he's the guy with the star tattoo. You track him down. He steals a hostage. You save the hostage, and then you catch back up with him. And he's been murdered by being thrown under a couple of garbage bags, because that's threatening. And it turns out it was by this serial killer that's going around murdering other criminals called Cletus Cassidy. They call him the Carnage Killer, and I hate that. Oh yeah,
they do.
It's so stupid. That's a dumb name, and it's a really crappy way to try to shoehorn in how he got the name Carnage. A bunch of the cops will say like, "Oh, these gratuitous crime scenes, like it shocks us all," and you never see a single one that's above like a PG rating. So then you find out there's this like Russian gangster mob thing. I don't know, there's a bunch of Russians causing trouble in New York City.
As they do.
One day you find out that Herman Schultz is back in the streets and as the Shocker, and he's robbing Oscorp. And you free a bunch of the hostages that are in there, and you meet Max Dillon, and you tell him to go get some of the hostages to safety, and then you stop seeing Max Dillon. But the Russians were also there. So you had Shocker's crew, and you had the Russian crew, both hit Oscorp at the same time, and you beat up Shocker. You deactivate all the weapons that they were trying to get their hands on. You find out about Craven, who claims to be, since he's also Russian, you kind of associate him with the Russian gang. But no, he's a different Russian. So, spoiler alert, he's actually in charge of them. But he tries to convince Spider-Man to become his like protege or something and learn how to hunt. It did also bring in this element of playing as Peter Parker and going from place to place, but all you do is just those conversations that are completely useless. So playing as Peter Parker stunk. You get to snap a few pictures, and that's nice. I always like to see a little bit more of that out of Spider-Man games, and I want to see more Peter Parker in Spider-Man games. Like, he's important, and you want to establish that contrast between his life as Peter and his life as Spider-Man, and that's always been an interesting thing. I just don't think they did it very well here. Except for his interactions with one character, and that would be Felicia Hardy, the Black Cat, who returns in this game. The only thing I liked about it was that Peter Parker tries talking to her. She has no interest in him whatsoever. She just kind of brushes him off and is like, I don't want anything to do with you. And I like that aspect. Yeah. That meets up with what happens in the comics, and I like that bit. But he meets her at this charity banquet or something, a fundraiser being held by Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin. You see, on a patrol with Kraven, Spider-Man found out that a bunch of the Russians were planning on a hit on the Kingpin at this fundraiser because Wilson Fisk and Harry Osborn have gone into a sort of joint business venture, and Oscorp is helping create this task force to do away with the need for vigilantes like Batman. And so Wilson Fisk is in charge of all the money. Harry Osborn's in charge of all the tech. So you meet Black Cat there, you meet Kingpin there, you have useless conversations, and then they're over. So Harry Osborn finds out that he's dying from the disease that his father just was killed by. It follows all the same plot holes from the movie, like him being in a rush for no reason. His father lived to be however old, and Harry has all of the resources that he had to live as long as he did and could continue developing a cure for it, and he's acting like he's gonna die tomorrow, and it doesn't make sense. That part's stupid. I can understand a certain level of his desperation, but not the time crunch of it. That doesn't make sense to me. But he asks Peter to ask Spider-Man for Spider-Man's blood so that he can cure the disease. But Spider-Man says no, and this makes less sense than it did in the movie, because in the first Amazing Spider-Man game, Spider-Man's DNA was part of the cure that saved New York City from the infection.
Yeah, which made sense because of the whole Spider-Man thing.
Right, he was the perfect cross-species.
Yeah.
Now, I get it, that the infection that Harry has isn't cross-species related, but Peter acting like he doesn't know what the blood is going to do to Harry is kind of dumb in this game. I get it, they were trying to keep it in line with the movie, but that's just kind of part of the problem with this whole game. And so eventually you find out that the task force is filled up with crooked cops and everything like that, and they will start hunting down Spider-Man anytime the public starts viewing him as a menace. And that brings me into how they ruined exploring New York City in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. So when you're swinging around the city, you've got this like hero and menace meter. By doing heroic acts, you fill up the hero meter. By missing any heroic acts, you fill your menace meter. And it can happen very quickly because missions will just pop up on the other side of the city. You will miss them, and the public will just view you as a menace. And I get that narratively, I can kind of understand what they're going for. It's still annoying during gameplay, and I stop wanting to explore the city because I'm just going to be viewed as a menace because all I want to do is mess around. I don't want to go stop crimes because they interrupt the flow of gameplay. Now when you get there, you beat everyone up, and then there's this annoying, intrusive Whitney Chang news update about Spider-Man doing this thing, and you have to wait for the game to load before you can skip it. It just takes you out. I know it's kind of a momentary interruption, but when every other Spider-Man game doing an open world setup has gotten it right, there was no excuse for this. So you eventually find out that Kingpin has been orchestrating everything in the background. You go to his base, you try to take him out, you start hacking his computers and everything, and then Electro comes out of nowhere, and for some reason you see him on Kingpin's computer and that he's in Times Square. And then you leave, Kingpin tries to strengthen his passwords, which, no, that's actually how it happens in the game. That's what happens.
He's like, gotta change. Is this?
Yeah, no.
No, that's too easy.
No, that's exactly what happened. It was so stupid.
Put some dashes in.
He's like, thank you for showing my areas of weakness. So Electro shows up. We don't see how he became Electro. It's implied through these stupid audio logs, but that's about it. Audio logs will pop up all over the place. There were some for Black Cat that explained that she was hired by the Kingpin to kill Spider-Man, and that happens for like a mission where she's robbing a museum, which I think was probably a reference to the original Spider-Man 2 game, which, fair enough. But after you fight her, she starts acting like the two of you have some sort of history and that it's firmly established and that there's a relationship there.
Yeah.
And there wasn't. She showed up for like 5 minutes in The Amazing Spider-Man 1. This doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. And so Electro is Electro, and we don't know why he's Electro. All you know how to do is just punch him into the face till he stops moving. And then once he's out of the picture, you find out that he was being held at Ravencroft. I don't know how he got there. And then they were running experiments on him, and that's how he became Electro. You don't even see it happen. You're just told about it. It's the whole tell don't show rule that, is great for any narrative.
Yeah.
It's perfect. And so then, you know, Harry Osborn injects himself with some sort of makeshift cure and turns himself into the Green Goblin, thus doing the exact thing Spider-Man told him would happen if he tried to rush things. And he starts going crazy. You take him out, and then it just sort of ends. Again, the stuff that happened in the film is so inconsequential to this game. It doesn't matter, and it feels so shoehorned in, it doesn't fit. Then you find out that Cletus Cassidy, who has been held in Ravencroft, has escaped, and they injected him with some sort of nanobot serum that was supposed to be an experimental cure for Harry Osborn's disease. And that's how we got symbiotes in this universe. He's Carnage now, he goes crazy, Ravencroft is in chaos, and then you find Cletus Cassidy, you fight him, you beat him. It's a really boring, thoughtless boss battle, and the game ends off pretending it had a point, and then you just are left with my final note.
Disappointment.
Disappointment. I want to sell this game as soon as this review is over because I'm upset that I actually spent money on this. It's a waste of time. Also, notice that Gwen Stacy was never in the game. She was kind of important to the film. In fact, like her inclusion in the movie was probably the part with the most impact. But yeah, she's not in the game. The developers didn't care. I don't think they knew what to do with her. I don't think they knew what to do with anything. And again, I think they wanted to do more, but because of time constraints and because they were forced to tie it into the film, they couldn't develop all the original ideas that they had, which, like, at the post-credit scene is about Kingpin talking to the Chameleon, who is a character that kept popping up throughout the game, and we haven't seen the Chameleon show up in a game yet, and I would have loved to have seen them do more with him, because he's a great character, but that's what we're left with. And that's just unfortunate. We will never see what they're planning on doing with all of that, but at the same time, I'm not shedding too many tears about it because we made it. Insomniac ended up getting the rights to the character. They started developing a game for it, and that's what this is all leading to.
Yeah, and by all means, this next one, every single trailer has looked pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
I know. I'm excited about it. I hope you're excited about it. I'm gonna go pick it up tonight. I'm gonna do 2 videos about it. So hopefully tomorrow, Friday, I will have a video, just kind of a quick synopsis. No spoilers, just sort of a, should you spend $60 on this? Yay or nay, that sort of thing. And on Sunday, later on that weekend, I'm gonna try to have a video that's more analytical, something a little deeper, something along the lines of the past few reviews. It won't be like this one, it'll be like the bigger ones, because then I'll actually have the time to sit down, write a script and record everything, edit to my heart's content, and get something of high quality out there for you guys to end off this marathon. But that being said, I do not recommend The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Please avoid it at all costs. It's not even worth it for a joke. It's not.
I played it for a maximum of maybe 2 minutes.
It
wasn't great, yeah.
If you find enjoyment in this game, good for you. I think that's great. I can't, and I don't think a lot of other people would. I don't recommend it. But with all of that said, thank you so much for watching, ladies and gentlemen, and we will see you next mission.
Thank you for playing. Would you like to try again?